Guys, so today I am going to be talking about some of my personal struggles with social anxiety. I've seen a lot of YouTubers open up about anxiety and stuff in general, but I haven't really seen people talking that much about social anxiety specifically, which is what I suffer from. I want to start opening up more on my channel and talking about things that have affected me in my life and different aspects of my life other than just beauty. So if you were wondering why this isn't a beauty video, then you know. So just before we start this, I want to say that I have been to a therapist and have officially been diagnosed with social anxiety by my therapist and also by a doctor. So I'm not just self-diagnosing, I know that I have social anxiety. First, I guess I'll do a brief description of what social anxiety is. I'm not a therapist or a mental health professional, so I don't know all the medical terminology. I don't know the specific definition. I could look it up, but I'm too lazy. So I'm just gonna give you the gist of it. It's basically being afraid of social situations and interactions, I guess. It used to be called social phobia, I think. That's just a basic summary of it, and of course everyone's gonna have different experiences. Some have it way worse than I do and some have it better, and that's just how the world works. So I don't know, I'm only speaking from my personal experience. Let's just get on into it. So basically, since as long as I can remember, I have felt very awkward and scared socially and very shy. I've always been a very quiet person, and it takes me a long time to get opened up enough to actually talk comfortably with people. So like I said, not a mental health professional. I don't know if social anxiety is typically triggered by something. My therapist kept trying to figure out what triggered it, I guess. Kept asking if my parents coddled me too much or things like that, and I was just I don't think so. I don't know. I can't remember any specific thing or any group of things that would have driven me to social anxiety or triggered that. So I really don't know if it's something you can be born with or if something has to trigger it or multiple different things. So I don't really know how I got it, but I just know that I have it, and I feel as long as I can remember, I've always had it. I feel social anxiety is definitely something that it's always been with me, and it's always a struggle that I deal with day to day. It's never gonna just be easy for me to go out and talk to people and stuff like that. So even though I have heard that it is extremely treatable and eventually people sometimes can get past social anxiety and stuff like that, I have gone through phases where it's really bad and some phases where I'm doing really well with it, and I kind of go back and forth. It's not I just do really well and then I'm past that fear. And that's kind of how my therapist talked about it, and maybe that's how it is for some people with social anxiety, I don't know. But for me personally, it's not just I, make phone calls and that doing something over and over, exposure therapy, all of that gets me less afraid of it. It's hard to explain, but basically if I do it consistently, then it gets a little bit less scary, and if I keep doing it, whatever that thing may be, phone calls, whatever, it gets a little bit less scary each time and I get a little bit better at it. But then if I stop, I take a break from doing it, or I'm just not doing it for a very long time, then it gets scary again, just like it was in the beginning. So it kind of goes back. Although I do have to say there is one thing that for me has changed, and I feel I have gotten past the fear of, for the most part. So when I was young, of course you have your parents order for you at restaurants and stuff, that's normal when you're a little child, But then when I was in middle school and stuff, they expect you to start ordering for yourself, and that was really scary to me, and so I would still have them do it for me sometimes. I actually remember, I think it was my sophomore year, because my high school had an open campus for lunch, which meant that you could go to like McDonald's or something for lunch with your friends or whatever, or you could go home for lunch. You didn't have to stay on the campus for lunch when I was in high school. I think they've changed it now, but when I was in high school, that's the way that it was. And they had a rule that you had to be a sophomore to be able to leave the building for lunch. Although lots of people broke that rule, I don't think I did. I may have like once. Don't tell my parents. But I'm pretty sure I didn't break that rule. So I'm pretty sure the first time that I went out to lunch with my friends was like my sophomore year. So it was when I was 15. And I remember going out with them for the first time. I remember it was to McDonald's specifically because I remember the moment. It was a scary moment because I realized when we got there, for some reason I didn't think about it before, but when we got there, I realized that I had to order for myself. And I remember like asking my friend, I was like, oh, do I have to order for myself? And she was like, yeah, I'm not gonna order for you. What are you talking about? Like, like it was so weird. But I was 15, and up to that point, I had very limited experience ordering for myself. I very rarely did, if ever. I think I did like a couple times at like restaurants and stuff, but not very often. So I remember having to go up and being so terrified to order for myself, which sounds like weird to me now because I'm really not like scared of it anymore, which is why I said like that's the one thing that really has changed. But back then it was terrifying to me, and I guess just having to do it every day, like I would go out with my friends to lunch like every day and I had to do it. I had to order for myself, so it just got to a point where it wasn't like scary anymore. Do I still get like a little tinge of anxiety when I go up to order? Yes. Do I go through what I'm gonna say in my head a million times before I actually say it? Yes. But it's not nearly as scary, and it's not something that I just like freeze up at the thought of, you know? I don't know, drive-thrus for me are sometimes easier than going in now because I don't have to deal with like the other customers around me, because I get very like anxious in crowds, which makes sense with social anxiety. But yeah, I don't know why, I just feel like I hate like the thought of being in someone's way, or like I don't know, there's just something about like crowds that just kind of like ugh. So going through a drive-thru now is like 10 times better than having to go in. It's definitely not as like anxiety inducing as like a phone call is. Those are still very scary to me. So anyway, like I was saying, I've dealt with this my whole life. I was always like quiet in class. I hated being called on by the teacher. It just like, I like could feel my throat like closing up because I was so just like terrified to speak. I don't know why. And I remember, and I still am kind of like this, I don't like speaking in a group or whatever if I'm not directly like spoken to first, if that makes sense. So in a classroom setting, that basically means I don't like shouting out answers, stuff like that. And in just like a friend group, if it was more than like 3 or 4 people, or if there were people that I wasn't like that close to or whatever, that I didn't really know, I hated like speaking up and like talking because I naturally just have a very like quiet voice, I guess, and it might be due to being shy and having social anxiety, which are 2 different things, by the way, and I can get into that in a different video if you want. But you can have social anxiety and not be shy. You can be shy and not have social anxiety. I just happen to have, I happen to deal with both. There you go. But yeah, I hate speaking up in a group because I'm always like afraid that no one's gonna hear me, and then I'm just gonna feel like really awkward. And my therapist, one thing that she would always say is like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, well, what's your worst fear with social anxiety? And for me, it's always just like seeming awkward, which I know that I do a lot. And I'm working on like not caring as much, but I don't know why that's such like a big deal to me, but I don't want to seem awkward. I don't want to be awkward. I don't want people making fun of me or thinking bad things about me. That like kind of thing is what fuels my anxiety a lot. Just like the thought that people think bad things about me, or like will think I'm stupid or dumb or weird or whatever, which I mean, it's not like, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, and it's not really, but like anxiety brain makes it feel like it's a much bigger deal. So I feel like my social anxiety really peaked once I graduated high school. Obviously like going off to college and stuff is something that's very new, and new social situations that I don't know what to expect are the scariest thing in the world. So I made the mistake of going to a very big college at first, and I did drop out after like a month. It was all in all a bad choice. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just kind of like going to college because that's what everyone else did, and I hated it because it was so big. There were so many people. I had no friends because I wasn't living on campus, because I was too scared to live on campus, and I was too scared to talk to people. So it was just really hard. Basically, after I dropped out, I felt like a failure. I didn't have a plan for my life, and I was trying to get a job, but honestly, getting a job was like one of the scariest things for me, and it still kind of like is, but I've had a job, so like I know kind of what it's like. But at that point, like getting a job was like the scariest thing, like going in for a job interview, going in for your first day, all of that kind of stuff. It was just so terrifying to me. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. Really, I think I posted one video, but it was for like another thing. So I really started posting regularly once I had dropped out of college, and it definitely helped me to feel like I had a purpose, but I still felt very just like depressed about life. I just felt really down about myself, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and it was a really hard time, and all of that really weighed in on like my social anxiety as well, and I wasn't really doing a whole lot of social stuff, so it really just took its toll, and I got to a point where I was like borderline agoraphobic, whatever, which is basically just the fear of like going outside. But for me, it wasn't like I was scared that if I go outside I'm gonna die or something like that. Like with some agoraphobes, I think it's like that. For me, it was just like I was scared to like go out and talk to people. Like I didn't want to go to a store and like talk to the cashier or anything like that. Like I didn't want to have any like human interaction basically, except for with the people that I was comfortable with. Eventually I did find a job, and I had to interview, I had to like call them, and it was very scary. And like going in, oh sorry, I bumped you, but going in for like my first day of work was really scary because I didn't know what to expect or what to do or like anything. But once I got past that and I started doing my work, and it was actually pretty good. I got hired around Christmas time, and I started out just by like being out in the store and not at the like cash register, which was good because that was something I was really afraid of, and I'm glad that I kind of got to like work my way up to it. And then I started doing cash register, and that was really scary. I had to answer the phones there, I had to greet people and talk to people, and it was all really scary. And I don't think any of my coworkers really understood that. They all just thought that I was like kind of shy and quiet, whatever, but I don't think a lot of people understand the extent of the fear. And it's not just like I'm quiet, like I don't like to talk. It's like I am scared to talk. I am scared. I was scared of like greeting people at the door. You had to just be like, hi, welcome to blank store. And that was always really scary for me. I was always really scared of like rejection, kind of. Just scared that they weren't gonna hear me and then it would be awkward, or they were gonna ignore me or whatever. And I was afraid that specifically like my coworkers were gonna think I was really awkward or weird because they didn't hear me, or they, you know, whatever, I don't know. Anxiety makes no sense, so don't try to make sense of it. But basically I was scared of them not responding and then me seeming like an idiot for saying hi, whatever. But I then slowly realized that like that's just how people react when you go into a store. Like they don't necessarily like respond to the person, and they also understand that you have to say that, you have to greet them, so it's not like a bad thing if they don't respond, and it's not you being awkward or anything, or like trying to get their attention and then you can't, which is also very, very scary for me and very cringy. But it's not like that because it was my job and that's what I was there to do. So it wasn't, I got past that pretty, not quickly, but I got past it eventually. And the phone calls, it kind of scared me. I knew like when I picked up the phone there was a certain thing that I was supposed to say, but then like once they like asked me a question or whatever, I'd be like, I don't know, let me get my manager. Like I was just like so scared, and I guess I was just really scared of like not knowing what to say, which is pretty much sums up my life. I'm pretty scared of like not knowing what to say and seeming very awkward and weird, which I normally do. And the main reason that I wanted to make this video is to talk about like what it feels like to have social anxiety, because I feel like at times people in my life have just not completely understood why I had trouble doing things that they could do easily without thinking about, you know? I think phone calls are scary for like the majority of human beings, so that one people understand kind of. They don't really understand the level of fear that I have with phone calls is different than theirs, but they still like kind of understand. But things like ordering for yourself or going up to a cashier and checking out, things that like, or just like even just going into a room full of people, those things don't scare everyone, but they're very scary to me. And the thing with anxiety is that, and people with like generalized anxiety will tell you the same thing, anxiety, first of all, it makes no sense. So trying to make sense of it just doesn't make sense. And it also, anxiety treats everything like a life or death situation. So it's not just like, oh, I'm like a little nervous to do this thing. It's like deadly kind of scary, if that makes sense. It is, for me at least, kind of like a phobia because it feels like the worst thing in the world. Like it is terrifying and it doesn't make sense, but it is. So it's kind of like an irrational fear. Like I have a fear of clowns, and I know that if I were to come in contact with somebody dressed up like a clown, I don't know what I would do. My fight or flight instincts would kick in and I have no idea which one I would be. But that to me would feel like a life or death situation. It would feel like I'm scared for my life. And it feels that same way for people with like anxiety, and for me specifically with social interactions. Sometimes if my anxiety is really bad, it will feel like a life or death situation even though it's not. And it's not that I actually think I'm going to die if I mess up this social interaction, but it feels that way. Like it feels that scary. If that makes any sense, I don't know. Like to me, people thinking that I am stupid, that I don't know what I'm doing, whether or not I actually do know what I'm doing, doesn't matter. People thinking that I don't know what I'm doing, that's terrifying to me. People thinking that I'm awkward or weird, or just thinking bad thoughts about me, all of that stuff feels like the worst thing in the world if they think I'm awkward or weird, or if they think I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm doing. That feels like the worst thing in the world in that moment. And obviously I can sit here and say like, obviously I know it's not the worst thing in the world, but in that moment it feels like it. Another thing about social anxiety, I also get sensory overload very easily. So what that kind of means, again, I don't know like the specific definition, but what that kind of means is that when a lot of people are talking or there's just a lot going on around you, my brain just like it just freaks out and I get very stressed and panicky and I just want out of that situation like immediately. So that's what happens to me in like crowds and stuff and just any like kind of loud situation. So around kids and stuff, I get very nervous around kids. Partly because of that and partly because I feel like I don't know how to talk to kids, which if it's just me and a child alone, like I'm good, like they like me and I can talk to them just fine. But if it's like other adults around, I'm always scared that they're gonna think I'm being really weird around the kid or like awkward or like I don't know. I just think that I'm gonna like talk to them wrong and people are going to get pissed at me or like just think I am very strange or something like that, which I don't know. It's weird. Kids like me and I'm fine with just them, but like with adults around I'm very scared. Does that make sense? But if there's like a lot of kids screaming and like other people talking and like all of this stuff going on, then my brain just can't process it and I just like freak out. I don't know if that's exactly a social anxiety thing, but I think it is. I don't know, but that's like something that I experience and it's very detrimental to me. That's the main cause for my panic attacks. I have very rarely gotten just like a random panic attack. It has happened, but very rarely. And I can't think. I can't. And like if people try to talk to me, I just get like freaked out because I'm like, I can't focus on what you're saying. I need out of this situation. And if I don't get out of that situation, then I usually have a panic attack and that's not fun. Anyone who's had a panic attack knows that they're not fun. My therapist said that exposure therapy is the best thing to do for social anxiety, and my doctor that I went to said that there's not really a good like medication to get on for social anxiety. I am on medication for another mental illness that I will talk about in a different video probably, but as far as social anxiety goes, the best cure is therapy and of course like just slowly exposing yourself to that fear. They kind of treat it the same way that you would an irrational fear. It's just if you want to get over that fear, which obviously if you have social anxiety you do because you have to be social, it's not something you can just avoid, then you have to slowly introduce it to yourself and you don't want to push yourself too fast because if you do it can sometimes make you go back. I felt like when I was working all the time I wasn't that scared to like talk to customers and stuff like that and like make phone calls and all of that or answer phone calls, and now I'm a little bit more afraid of it that I haven't been working for like a month. So for me it's something that I have to like consistently do in order to keep my fear at bay. But it does suck to always be afraid of things that are so ingrained in our society that you have to be able to do in order to be like a working member of society. I think people don't understand how hard it is, and I'm not trying to be like, oh woe is me, like feel sorry for me, blah blah blah. Like I'm not trying to be like that. I hope that people will get some understanding from this, and if you also have social anxiety, I'd love to hear like how similar our experiences are or how different they are. So definitely let me know in the comments. Hopefully if you have social anxiety this made you feel like you're not so alone. But for the people who don't have social anxiety, I really just wanted to make this video to kind of hopefully help you understand if you have somebody in your life with social anxiety or anything, like just understand that even though it might be frustrating to you, it's frustrating to them too, and it's not something that they can control. They can try their best, you know, to like push themselves, but you can't really push them unless they're ready to be pushed, because otherwise it's going to make them retreat further back into their shell and they're just going to be even more afraid. So it's something that the person has to be willing to work on themselves, and if they're not ready to do that, then they're not ready to do that. Now don't like coddle them, don't do everything for them all the time because that doesn't help anybody, but you know, don't push them too much also. Does that make sense? It is really hard to feel like other people can do this stuff so easily, and then for people with social anxiety it's like such a scary thing to do like everyday mundane tasks like go to the store and be around people you don't know or people you barely know, having to talk to cashiers and having to go through drive-thrus and ordering at restaurants and picking up the phone, making phone calls, going through job interviews is like 10 times more stressful. It's just not easy for us. Like, I watch my girlfriend talking to like strangers and it's so easy for her, and she says it's not easy for her, but it seems easy for her, and it seems like it just flows naturally, and she's good at small talk and all of that, and I suck at small talk because I just don't know what to say and I'm scared. Social interaction just isn't natural for people with social anxiety. It feels very forced and scary. I think also another misconception is that people with social anxiety are introverts, and although I am, not all people with social anxiety are. Not all people with social anxiety are necessarily like quiet either, or like shy or anything like that. Like, it's completely like, you can be whatever kind of person. It doesn't change like the kind of person and your personality. Most commonly, people with social anxiety are introverts and shy, but not always. And vice versa. People who are introverted are not necessarily people who have social anxiety or are afraid of social interaction. They refuel being by themselves. That's basically what being an introvert means. So I hope that that made sense to you guys and maybe helped explain kind of what it feels like with social anxiety. I know sometimes it can feel like you're crazy because it's like, oh my god, it's like everyone finds this so easy and I find it so hard. Why? Maybe you have social anxiety. Maybe, you know, it's a mental illness and it's not something that you can help. But it is something that you can work on and change. It is still a struggle for me every single day of my life, because every single day, pretty much, you're doing something social, and for me that is scary still. But eventually it gets less and less scary, and the more that you do it, the less scary it becomes, as long as you kind of keep it going and keep doing it. That's it for this weird rambly video, but I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel for more mental health videos, as well as lots of different kinds of topics. Leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye guys!